I didn't know what I was doing, but that didn't stop me from getting carried away and dropping $100 on a rock. Turns out, masonry wasn't as hard as I thought, and I learned why sometimes you just have to see an idea through to the end. I'll do a lot of things just for the bit. I like it when I can mention something to my friends and they laugh at it. Like when I got to go around asking, have I told you that I'm trying to make a boat out of ramen noodles right now? Or in the case of this video, did I mention to you that I just bought a 400-pound boulder? I usually get a good giggle and a funny look, which brings me a lot of joy. Although buying a 400-pound boulder is pretty silly and sounds really random to spend my money on, it's actually not meant to be something funny. It was meant to be a little bit of a serious project. I don't always start projects knowing what I'm doing. I get a lot of joy from doing things for the first time and learning something new. Masonry is one of those things that I've wanted to do for a while, so this is a project that I decided to come up with to do it. There was definitely a big barrier to entry. I found it a little daunting to buy a boulder because I wasn't sure how I was going to transport it to my house. Luckily enough, it was actually really easy. I was able to rent a U-Haul for 10 bucks. The only problem was that once I got the boulder home, there wasn't really any good way of moving it around. I kind of just had to roll it by hand.
Lift with your back. Remember that. It's good for you. Oh my god.
After almost crushing my toe, I struggled to roll it to its final resting place. But once I got it there, I was so hyped about it.
Oh, I love it so much. This is the best money I've ever spent on anything. I could hug this rock all day. Fuck a tree hugger. Where are my rock huggers at?
Now would be a good time to mention what I'm even doing with this rock. Since this was the first time I was ever going to do any sort of stone carving, I wanted to make it pretty simple. So I came up with the idea by thinking back on my childhood. When I was a kid living in Japan, my family was invited to pound mochi. For those of you who don't know, mochi is a traditional Japanese food made by cooking special rice and pounding with a hammer. In order to pound the rice, they have this massive boulder that has been carved into a mortar that you put the rice in. Everyone gathers around and takes turns swinging hammers at it until it turns into a gooey paste. You can see in these photos that I was a little too small to hold the hammer very well, but I remember it being really fun to try and pound the rice. It was nice to have friends and family together working towards a common goal, especially when that goal was making great food. So a little bit of this project is me wanting retribution because I never actually got a chance to swing the hammer properly, and I feel like I would be really good at making mochi now. So that's why I chose to buy this stone and make the mortar myself. I started out by cutting into the bottom of this rock so that nobody would be able to see it if I messed it up. It was gonna need to sit flat on the ground, so I needed to cut a flat spot anyway, so that was kind of the perfect place to start. When planning out how I was going to do this, I really liked the way that the rock looked naturally, so I was going to try to keep as much of it intact as possible. That's definitely a choice and not because I didn't feel like carving the entire rock into a bowl. But genuinely, I actually did think that the contrast of a nice smooth bowl on the top would look kind of neat with the rough exterior of the boulder. You can see that I'm just using an angle grinder, and I have this cold cutting diamond masonry bit in here, which was like $30 at Home Depot. There were so many warnings on this blade's packaging that made me feel like I was going to die when I was using it. But it was way safer and easier to use than those fiberglass discs you normally use to cut metal with. Those things, if you pinch them just right in a piece of metal, can shatter and cut your neck open. This felt way more safe. Then I just used a simple hammer and chisel to break all the pieces off. I have to say that this project was actually way easier than I expected. It was so fun to swing the hammer at the chisel. Everything broke away so easily. It was so satisfying. I am racking my brain trying to come up with another project that I can do because I want to do masonry so bad. This was awesome. Once I was close to finishing up the bottom, I picked up a piece of plexiglass and used it to see where the high spots were. I actually came up with this all by myself. And normally, I think it sounds better to say that you learned this method from some old man so that it sounds like, oh, this is a tried and true method, but I'm pretty proud of the fact that I came up with this and it worked really well. I fully expect to see so many comments telling me that I'm stupid and plexiglass flexes and that wasn't the best way to do it. This is how you really should have done it. But honestly, I don't really care because it worked. After I used my special technique, it was time for me to flip the boulder over and see if it actually laid flat on a piece of plywood.
That's so sick, man. I know all I did was flatten it, but dude, look at this rock. It's kind of like the perfect top for the bowl. I love doing new things. This boulder is actually sitting, I thought maybe it would lean over here, but it's so heavy, like it just sits so well. It's so perfect. It's so cool. I love this thing. I can't believe how excited I am about a big rock. My arms are killing me though. I got such a pump from swinging that hammer, man. I do not do enough weightlifting. So I'll probably have to wait to work on this tomorrow and give my arms a little bit of a rest, but that is so sick.
Tomorrow came and it was time for me to work on the most gratifying part, carving the bowl into the top. I honestly didn't plan much when it came to cutting the bowl into the top. I just took the largest mixing bowl that we had in the kitchen and traced it. You know, I've done a number of projects with my friends, and it's always interesting to see how their brains think. Some of my friends are real perfectionists. They have engineers' brains and they really want to plan everything out and make sure that we have drawings in CAD so that we can follow it to the T and everything goes super smoothly. Other friends I have could honestly care less. They won't even take the extra time to do things that I think are necessary to have the project work. I definitely find myself somewhere in the middle. I don't waste too much time planning things out if I already have a good idea of how it's going to go. And I don't like to waste my time putting in too much work if I know that it's only going to make the result better by 10%. I'm kind of lazy when it comes down to it. And that's exactly how I felt about cutting the bowl into this. I knew it had to be big enough to hold a couple cups of rice, and that's really all that mattered. No one was going to be able to tell if I didn't make it the perfect dome shape. So I didn't really waste any time measuring any of it. I just carved away and made sure that I was still having fun swinging that hammer. Speaking of friends, a big reason for me wanting to make the mochi in the first place was to give myself a reason to invite people over. As I've gotten older, I've realized that my parents aren't here to drag me to their friends' parties where all of my other friends have also been dragged to. Unfortunately, it's now my job to take time out of my busy day to host events and spend energy inviting my friends over so we can have a good time. So yeah, this project wasn't just about me being able to swing a hammer. It was also about me wanting to share tradition and maybe start a new tradition with my friends. Growing up, I've always been really jealous of the people who got to have yearly pig roasts in their neighborhoods. Nobody ever hosted anything like that near me, and I wanted great food that I didn't have to put any effort into. Unfortunately, that's not this project, but there is still nothing I love more than getting people together over food that takes way too long to prepare and drinking probably 5 too many beers while I'm waiting for it to be done. I am also kind of a petty asshole, and I want to one-up all those people by starting a yearly tradition where we swing hammers while we're drunk, rather than just watching a pig spin over a fire on a stick. I'd gotten the rough shape of the bowl chiseled out, and I needed to make sure that the surface was smooth enough to polish. Luckily, I still didn't have to do any handwork because they have another angle grinder attachment for that. It's very similar to one of those power carving attachments for woodworking, except it has diamonds all over it so it can eat away at the stone. The blade was stupid easy to use, and it really took no time at all to get the inside of the bowl smooth enough to polish. You could probably just leave it here, but I decided that I wanted it to look extra shiny and good. So I brought out the corded drill because I didn't want to have to deal with batteries. And I got these cheap polishing pads on Amazon and began running through the grits. It started at about 50 grit and went up to 6,000, which left a really nice finish. You might be wondering, is it really necessary to polish the inside of the bowl? I honestly don't know. I know that the rice is going to be really sticky once we start pounding it, and I wanted to make sure there wasn't anywhere for it to get stuck inside of the mortar. The main reason I wanted to polish it though was that it would help smooth out some of that shoddy craftsmanship I was telling you about earlier. No one was going to be able to tell that I didn't do a perfect job if they were so impressed with how smooth it was. After getting it polished, I was glad to move on to making the hammers. My back was not happy for being bent over that stone for a couple hours. When deciding how I wanted these hammers to look, I actually spent a little bit more time figuring that out. Kind of because I cared about the way that they looked, but mostly because I spent way too much money on the piece of wood that I was going to be using, and I didn't want to have to buy more because I couldn't afford that. So I made a rough mock-up out of insulation foam first. That way I could kind of get the proportions. I started out making everything oversized and didn't really spend too much time fussing over the little details because, like I said earlier, I'm still lazy and I knew if I made it too big, I could cut it down to the right size rather than spending too much time measuring it and figuring it out first. I really didn't want to have to actually break out a ruler. So I finished eyeballing it and decided that I still needed to cut a little bit off to get them to be just right. For the wood, I'm using white oak because it's really hard and pretty easy to get your hands on. I needed to glue the boards up to be extra thick for the head of the hammer. I actually wanted it to be bigger originally, but it ended up being a good thing that they didn't have a thicker piece of lumber because honestly it would have been too heavy, and I think they turned out really good in the end. After gluing the head up, before I shaped anything and made my life too hard, I drilled a hole for the handle. Then it came time to turn this block into a cylinder. I really wasn't sure how I was going to do this. This wood is really hard and I don't have all the right tools. I'm also just not the best woodworker in general, so it was difficult for me to figure out what the best plan of action was. I ended up using my mini bandsaw, which worked out. It was barely able to cut through the wood, only burning it a little bit. Originally, I was thinking I would use hand tools to kind of finalize the shape of the head, but my belt sander was actually just barely strong enough to work it into shape, so I ended up taking the lazy route out again. This did take me a decent amount of time, and I was actually working on this right up until people were coming over to my house to pound mochi. So I ended up keeping one of them octagonally shaped, which I actually liked a lot better than the round. I kind of regret spending as much time as I did making the one round. It actually ended up being a good thing that I made both though, because some people needed a lighter weight hammer. While working on the handle, I had a couple friends over. It was really nice to have company while I worked. Recently, I've been having a hard time completing projects because I have to do them alone, and I don't always want to spend my weekends just working on projects. I often want to hang out with my friends and relax. This YouTube channel is really a big passion project for me, and it takes a lot of time and money to do it, and I don't always feel like I have the energy to put into it. So it felt good to kill two birds with one stone and get my work done while still being able to shoot the shit with my friends. They also help to make the work a little bit more fun. I finished off the hammers with a wedge in the top, and without taking a break, it was time to set up for the party. As I said, I had a pretty good time working on this project, but it was still a lot of work. Not very often am I making something that I get to enjoy with my friends, so this project felt extra gratifying to finish. We all enjoyed drinks,
1 million beers, 1 million cheers.
swung hammers,
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Wow.
mistakes happened, new memories
not
were
watching.
made.
The Iranian government developed this technique.
No, they did not.
Not sure if
teach you that shit. You could do this one too.
Yeah.
Jokes were had.
Stop it. Yeah, does this remind you of work?
Yeah.
Remind you of work? What do you mean?
Where do you think he works?
Do you work at a sperm bank?
Kind of.
Different food was shared.
Yo, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's like a proper thing.
Yeah.
That's so good.
less drunk now.
I'm so happy. Like, that works so well.
Oh, fuck with the red bean.
Yeah, the red bean's good.
Red bean's good.
Oh, that's wicked.
Ready?
Yeah.
I like that one the best. You like the soybean?
Yeah.
I think this one.
It does taste good.
Would eat again.
Would eat again.
Hey, what'd you think about the experience?
Oh yeah.
very
10
fun.
out of 10.
Very fun.
And in the end, I was able to bring a community together and not only relive my childhood, but build on it. Leaving me with a night I'll never forget and giving me something to look forward to next year.